Welcome to Promote, Profit, Publish. I'm your host, Juliette Clark, and we have a really great guest today. I know I always say that, but we're going to talk about something a little bit different today, nurturing your content. But before we get started, I want to remind you to go over to YouTube. Sure, I can think. Go over to YouTube, follow us on Superbrand Publishing, subscribe, and you can see all the videos, all these interviews over there. Also, don't forget to take our Promote, Profit, Publish quiz. You can find that at www.promoteprofitpublishquiz.com. So today's guest is Hailey Rowe, and she is a marketing and sales strategist for online service providers who want to gain more clients online consistently, grow their business to full-time, and rock their sales without self-doubt. She shares her business marketing and mindset tips in her Health Coach Nation podcast and in Health Coach Nation Facebook group, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. Since 2010, Hailey has worked in the coaching industry as well as in business development and marketing for several wellness companies and startups. She's also a certified behavioral change specialist and a human potential coach. Hailey's philosophy is you can have amazing service and impact to make, but without a strong mindset and sales and marketing plan, your business will remain a hobby. That is absolutely true, Hailey, and welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you because we talk a lot about content on here, but people don't often understand why it is such a great nurturing tool. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, content's great because it takes somebody from being a stranger and, just coming to your profile to actually feeling like, oh my God, I know this person, the know, like, and trust factor in marketing, right? So, and it also helps somebody feel a part of something. Like with my content and with my Facebook community, we all are a tribe and we all are trying to make the world a healthier, happier place because I'm helping coaches and health coaches, life coaches, mindset coaches keep their jobs and make their impact and book clients. So I think what it does is it unifies everybody. It shows what you stand for. It can weed out people who aren't meant to be in your audience or a client. And it can really be a magnet for the people who are right for your offer.
That is so true. And you and I had that discussion about, you have a way of doing that and we do it with the quiz, but it is so very important. But I want to go back to what I said in that intro about part-time, because I found this out when I first started my publishing company and when I had clients starting to come on, is until you learn internet marketing, you're going to be part-time. Yeah. It's an integral part of that. And in my opinion, and I'm going to have you talk about this a little too, it's not something that you can just hire a company and say, go do it. You need to understand it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think as I say, sales and marketing are, especially if your business right now is under 10K per month, like those are the things that are going to help you grow this. And even though I work with a lot of people who say, well, I just want to be really good at what I do and I just want to work with my clients, I say, okay, but are you going to hire out all the sales and marketing, or are you going to learn it yourself first, do it, grow it, and then hire people? So you do have to make that choice. It's a trade-off.
Well, I do think it is. But then people, when you hire a marketing company, a lot of times, I think the failure, when people always blame the marketing company, it was the marketing company that did it. But I think truly the failure behind a lot of this is if you don't have a thorough understanding of what they're doing, your message, your audience before you hire them, a lot of times they can't bridge that gap. You have to be really confident about what you're doing to relay that to them. Yeah.
Totally. And that's why my philosophy is the same on that. I agree that I think you should learn it first, know what metrics to look for, know, how long it truly takes, etc., before going to somebody and expecting them to just do it, because then it's a better way of protecting yourself. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. And there's a big word right there, expectations. A lot of times when people hire a marketing company, they expect to see instant results, and you don't always get that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it depends on the strategy you're choosing too. Like there's long-term strategies, bless you.
Thank you.
Long-term strategies and there's short-term strategies. The long-term strategies sit there, accumulate leads, work for you in the long run without you being there. The short-term strategies are things like, I'm doing outreach on social media. I'm going to go live today. I'm going to, whatever it is. Like, so you need to have a balance of both, but I agree that sometimes it can take up to 3 months with some of those long-term strategies. And I'll give another example, like being on podcasts in my mind is a long-term strategy because it sits there, it gets good SEO. And I've had people say, oh, I heard you on a podcast a year and a half ago. And now here I am, I'm ready to work with you. So just making sure that when it comes to expectations, define, is this the thing that is a long-term strategy and that will pay off and it's kind of passive and it sits there? Or is this an active short-term strategy? And, make sure you're diversifying between both.
Right. And that brings up a good point. A lot of people start podcasts because they think it's an instant gratification tool, and pod fading, you know what pod fading is, right? Where you start one and then they die. So, and typically the average podcaster doesn't even get to 25 episodes.
Yes,
so,
I have heard these stats. It's crazy. Yes.
Yeah. So you have to, when Hailey says a long-term strategy, when I have a client who starts one, I tell them year minimum. Like, you can't even begin to build the audience around that until it's been there for a year. Do you think it's a year, longer than a year? What are your thoughts on that? Because you have a podcast. You've had yours for longer than I've had mine, I think.
Yeah, I will tell you, I've started the podcast in 2017, late 2017, probably like December. And it was in the beginning, it was very unclear about what my strategy was behind it. It was very inconsistent. It was just overall pretty darn bad. And I just was like, oh, I'm going to throw this out there. Like, this would be great. I want to talk to cool people. So that's pretty much why I'm doing it. And so I wanted an excuse to interview people. And so then when I actually got consistent with it, which I probably, honestly, 2020 has been my most consistent, clear, strategized year with my podcast. It's gotten so much better as far as the results, meaning, people saying, oh, I love your podcast, listen to your podcast, etc. So my thought is, you don't have to be perfect. And it did help me that I had it sitting there for a little bit of time before I went all in and was more perfect, but I'm still not perfect. So you got to have, I would say, don't let things stop you or paralyze you from starting a podcast. But at the same time, go in knowing your clear intentions, being committed to it for the long term, and making sure that it makes sense for your priorities. And as far as a time length, it depends, because if you're not doing anything to promote it and you're just putting it out there, like, good luck. But if you're also repurposing it on social media, having really big guests on there, getting tons of reviews, then it can grow pretty quickly. Right? So it just, it depends.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I think the more episodes you get, like, we are 2 years out, I think, this month. So we have, 104 episodes to choose from. And so I'm literally able to post on social media 3 days a week with either brand new content or older content. And you can see the results of that. We've gone up 30% in our listens this year. So it truly is something you have to commit to over the long haul with it. So what are you seeing with COVID? Because I'm seeing all of these businesses that were online that are really thriving. And then I'm seeing the people who, got shut down. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden they have to go online, and they had no idea it was this hard. What are you seeing the same thing?
Yeah, I'm seeing, I agree with you. I'm seeing a lot of online businesses explode right now. Mm-hmm. And same thing with, like, even I work with a lot of health coaches, and some of them have, with their products and stuff during COVID, like essential oils and CBD and all that. I mean, they're doing really well. And they've sold a lot of health coaching packages because a lot of people are like, I'm home, I don't have a gym anymore, I need help, like, eating everything. So So it's been good for some people. But as far as the local businesses, yeah, it is hard. It's like, and there's this quote from, and I feel like what would we do as online businesses if the same thing happened with the internet?
Yeah.
If the internet
Right.
went down for 3 weeks, like we'd be
Like a day like it did this morning for me.
Yeah.
I was lost.
Exactly. So it's like nobody's safe, but at the same time, being online is a good thing. But there's a quote from Warren Buffett that's like, when the tide goes out, you see who's left with their pants down or something like that, or who's swimming naked. It's something like that. And I think what's happened with the whole COVID thing is we figured out, oh man, this has been, retail and local things have been going down a little bit here and there, and not all of them, but the trends, right? A lot of things are shifting to online. But now when the COVID hit, it was like the tide went out. So a lot of people were caught swimming naked with no backup plan and no online presence. So a lot of people are rushing to try to create that and try to get that going. And I think it's a good thing. But also it is unfortunate that all this has happened.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I would think of the healthcare, I can see why it's booming, because when I see on TV them talking about COVID, nobody ever says, hey, you high risk people, it's time to lose weight. It's time to eat better. They're just, you're going to die. They've got this hype going and not the healthy way through all of this, which really irks me.
Yeah, I know. I feel you on that.
Yeah, it definitely does. So what are you seeing trend-wise with everything out there in the marketing world? What's working these days? What's not?
Yeah. Well, I think it depends on your business and your ideal client. So for me personally, what works for me best is LinkedIn lead generation, my Instagram and interacting with my followers there, creating an engaging, community there, and then my Facebook community. And the reason that I say that is because, well, first, my Facebook group is where it's the central location. It's like where I send everyone. It's where I do the most things. And so they all kind of work together, but they all kind of go to one place. So I think what works is finding where would your ideal client be watching you, number one, and number two, how can I make it simple? How can I simplify things for myself? Because if you're doing this by yourself, or even if you just have, you don't have a ton of teammates, yeah, you can be on every platform, going all in, and it's pretty easy to share posts from platform to platform. So I would say do it if you can. But at the same time, I'm all about double down what works and where you're going to show up and be consistent. And so for me, that's my Facebook group. And that's kind of the main thing.
So people are always mystified when I ask them to open up a Facebook group about what am I going to post? And I think this is where the content really comes into place, because when you tell them, well, you're going to valuable tips, you're going to, do things inside of there that, create community, they just kind of die. It's just kind of, how do I do that? So what do you provide for your community content-wise in the group that is engaging?
Yeah. So this is such a good question. And again, I think a Facebook group is what we call long-term strategy, where the first year it was pretty dead and it was small and right. So it's all good, but you got to keep showing up there. And what I post in my Facebook group are a couple different things. One, well, first, just let's start with a framework. Think about, what do you want your ideal client to know before they work with you? So do they need to know that they have a problem? Do they need to know that, this certain excuse or objection that they keep holding on to isn't serving them? Do they need to know a certain piece of educational information that's going to inspire them to reach out to you? Like, what do they need to know? The second thing you want to ask yourself is, what do I want them to be doing? Do I want them to be booking a call with me? Do I want them to be nurtured on my email list? What's the goal here to capture the lead and move them into the conversion stage? And also, what do I want them to be doing to see wins from my group. So do I want them to come to my lives and ask questions? Do I want them to fill out a workbook that I made for them this week? Like, we'll figure that out as well, because when you give them small wins and good experience in your group, that's going to be beneficial and they're going to remember that. And then the last part is, so what do I want them to know? What do I want them to do? And how do I want them to feel? And that's important because, as we know, everything we do is pretty, our buying decisions are emotionally based a lot of the time. And it's all about community. That's what Facebook groups are all about. So I want them to feel excited to be there. I want them to feel like they're getting value from the group. I want them to feel excited about the content in there, things like that. And so then when we break that down more as like what that might look like for a week, for the feelings, we'll go with that first. Things like, I love doing, what gets the most engagement is honestly the least amount of work, which is crazy, which is using a colored background. You know how on Facebook you can do that? And writing a short question, literally being like, what's your goals this week? Or I would have more business success if I fill in the blank. And you start conversations with people, nurture them, give them a resource. If you have old podcasts on something that they said, like maybe they said their goal is, I want to launch my group program this month, and you have a podcast about launching, be like, that's awesome. This might help. Check it out. Let me know if you have any questions. When's the launch? Like, and you get that conversation started. So that's the first piece. The second piece with feelings is storytelling posts. So sharing a story about a client's transformation, maybe interviewing a client as social proof, maybe sharing like your, something you're struggling with and what you did to fix it. Things just people can relate to and that kind of thing. Then when it comes to what do you want them to do, you can have calls to action in your group. So posts that are maybe give valuable tips. They start out with a catchy headline. They give a couple quick tips or something that can give your ideal client a small win. And then at the bottom they say, and by the way, if you want the rest of the 3 tips, sign up for the free 3-tip guide, blah, 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 in the link in the comments. Or something that says book a call, right? So that's the do part. And then the last part is, what do you want them to know? Well, those would be posts that are written posts or video posts where you're overcoming objections, but in like a storytelling way or in your personal story type of way. That's also where you're educating. So you're doing your lives and things like that. So overall, if I was going to break down like the 5, maybe, I don't know how many types of posts, you'd have your color background question posts that are engagement-based, question-based, short, talk-to-me-based. You'd have your types like knowledge type of posts. What do you want them to know? You'd have your storytelling and feeling types of posts. You'd have objection-busting types of posts, and you'd have social proof as well. And then you'd have a few promo posts in there. I'm not against ever, it is important to say, what do you even do in there?
Right. Now, I love that. You guys, she just gave you a content calendar that you can rinse and repeat. Every day of the week, Monday through Friday, do one of those things and do it consistently. And that's what brings people in. I also want to address, she mentioned in there CTA. So one of the things, and I think I've told you guys this story before, you have to be able to transition people out of social media and onto your list. Because what if Facebook were gone tomorrow? Yep. And Hailey, I tell this story. I had a friend, gosh, it must have been like 10 years ago, who had a huge following on MySpace. Are you even old enough to remember MySpace?
Oh, yeah. I know MySpace. Uh-huh. I don't know how to delete my MySpace. I don't know the login. It's really...
I didn't even know MySpace was still there. But she had over 300,000 hits on a monthly newsletter. She had a very glossy magazine. And when everybody jumped over to Facebook, she actually lost her sponsors and most of her business because she didn't make them opt in. And if she'd made them opt in, that call to action, like to get that list you were talking about, then she could have just written a series of emails, put the Facebook group link in, or they didn't have groups back then, but here's our page, find us here. And she would have not only been able to transition that, but she would have been one of the first people over on Facebook generating business. So you always have to do that. That's so very important as part of this process, engaging process.
Totally.
Yeah. So your Facebook group, how many lives do you do? Do you do pretty, because people avoid lives. They don't want to be on camera. How often do you do lives?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I've taken the summer. I mean, I've been doing lives, but much less than I used to. So I used to go live like almost maybe 3 times a week or sometimes daily if I'm in a big push period. And they'd be short sometimes. They'd be 5 to 15 minutes. But so to answer that, right now I'd say it's at least once a week. And what I used to do as well is have like a weekly time. So Tuesdays at 4:30 Central Time used to be my regular time. I need to probably start doing that again. But people got into it and, it had a routine and people expected it. So I think that's really good if you can get into a habit of telling people when you're going to be live and maybe doing the colored background post and being like, going live in 15 minutes, ask your questions about blank. So yeah, consistency is best.
Yeah, so much. Tracy Hazard and I had a Monday marketing mixer that we just stopped because of the election. We don't want to be on Facebook as much as we used to. But the interesting thing is every time we jump on a phone, we have a weekly call. We stopped at June 30th and we're shocked at how many people are still liking the page. They're watching the videos. We're like, wow, how come these people never actually showed up at that time? Because we used to get about 1,000 views a week and we're still getting it. So that's another one of those things though that you have to build up over time and get them really used to you being there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, very much. So other ideas, you use Instagram a lot. I'm not an Instagram user. How do you use Instagram in all of this?
Yeah, I use Instagram. I'm a big fan of IGTV, and that's something that Instagram really pushes right now onto people's more news feeds. But the real questions you should be asking when it comes to Instagram is what kind of content is the most shareable and what kind of content is the most savable, meaning people want to come back to it later and they click that little upside down flag on Instagram to save your content and look at it. So those kinds of posts typically for me are like quote posts, something where I'm giving like super juicy tips that they'll need to look back at, like a template or something. The IGTV, sometimes people will save because they want to go back and watch it later. So thinking about that, and then I use Instagram stories as well, but keep in mind that like Instagram stories, only about, like 2%-ish of your followers will watch your stories on average, and that's average.
Really?
Yeah, so don't be afraid on Instagram to have a consistent message. Keep talking about your offer, doing these things day after day, because a lot of people don't see it unless you're, really lucky in the algorithm and you're using ads and all that. So that's I would say that it's good to do stories because a lot of people do that more than scrolling the feed, and it's good to have savable and shareable posts.
Very good. And you and I met over on LinkedIn. And so for me, LinkedIn is probably where most of my audience is, but I had to learn it. And I've had a couple clients lately who are really comfortable with Facebook and they don't want to go put the work in on LinkedIn, even though their people are there. So for you, was LinkedIn just a natural, or did you have to really, because I know Facebook was huge for fitness. So did you really have to push it and learn it?
I did. I actually outsourced that, but I learned like how it works and that kind of thing. So I'm a big fan of using Sales Navigator and trying to find your ideal client and connect and build. And I like that. What I like about LinkedIn is it is a place for networking. You're not out of place by connecting with somebody. You're not out of place by saying, hey, I would love to learn more about you. It's not weird. Like, that's what I love about LinkedIn. And I also love the statistics about LinkedIn as far as like, people are more ready to buy, like their average income is higher. So there's a lot of benefit, and it's less saturated. I'm sure by now it's gotten more saturated, but it is less saturated than Facebook and Instagram. So I'm a big fan, and I just like connecting with people, and sometimes having a networking call, and that's how we book this podcast. So it's really a great tool.
Yeah, I agree. I actually use something a little bit more automated with LinkedIn, but again, it doesn't seem weird. Every once in a while, I'll tell you guys a funny story. When my coach started having me use the automation, my first thing was, oh, I hate that. Mm-hmm. Like, I hate it when I get, but he had me use a message that was non-salesy. Mm-hmm. And every once in a while I get a jerk, but most of the people are super nice. So you're right. It's not weird to reach out and say, hey, but here's one thing I'm hating. Are you seeing this a lot too? Is I don't know who out there is teaching a particular message, but I get the same message from like 10 people on one day.
Really?
do you do that?
Message? No.
Oh, it's just like, I noticed your profile, and it's very generic. It's like word per word. So there's some coach out there teaching it, and I don't think they understand when you see it over and over. I almost want to write back sometimes when I'm in a smart aleck mood, like, so what was it about my profile?
Right.
So whatever you do, you have to be genuine in that reach, that outreach.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I agree. I think at some point you got to automate it, and then you're answering the messages. So it's, or you have a teammate and answering them, and I'm saying from team, whatever. So I think that's okay. Like, I never get, and I don't know about everybody else, but like, I'm not offended when I get a copy paste message. It's fine. I'll either not answer if I'm not interested, or say like, okay, like I get this all the time, or I know what you're doing. Like, I'm a business owner too. Good luck. Like, like I think people, so yes, I've gotten those messages too that are snarky and like, I'm not looking for any services. And meanwhile, I said nothing about my services. I literally was like, hey, great to connect. Yeah. I'd love to hear more about you. What are you excited about these days? Or, whatever. And so I agree, making the message short, making it genuine as you can, and then answering it yourself, and not being offended if somebody's like, oh, I hate LinkedIn messages. Like, it is what it is.
Yeah, it really is. And I have a small video in mind, but I'm looking for pod swaps. That's the whole point of mine. I think that's how we met. And so I don't do anything salesy in it. It's just, this is what I'm looking for. Here's a short video about what I do. And the video's not meant to be salesy. It's meant to be, before you can say, yes, let's talk about a swap, you need to know if I'm a good guest for your show. So, but I think that's a key point of that is, don't go selling.
Exactly.
I see so many financial. Yeah, I see a lot of financial planners and CPAs. They go right in and it's a sale. Let's talk about, like, I don't know you. I don't want to talk about my finances with you.
Yeah, right. A stranger on the internet. Cool.
I know, right? That's almost worse than the guy looking for a date from, Algeria, or my $3 million is in Africa waiting for me to sign up.
You're missing out, girl.
I know. So, well, this has been really great. So, do you have something you'd like to give us today, and where can we find you?
Yes, you can find me. I have a podcast as well. So it's called Health Coach Nation. And I have the Health Coach Nation Facebook group. I'm at HaileyRowe.com, HaileyRowe.com. And on that website, there's 2 free things. There's my free niche marketing and Instagram bio checklist training. And then there's also a free strategy call opportunity. So if you wanted to talk about your business, you can do that. And then I'm on Instagram at Hailey_Rowe. And I'm on, where else? I'm everywhere. Facebook page, it's all good.
Thank you so much for being on today. This was really great.
Thank you.